The family was about to leave when Liang Jiahao's voice came from behind. Jie. Liang Wanjun paused and looked at Liang Jiahao without any emotion in her eyes. The amount she doted on her little brother before was proportionate to how disappointed she was in him now. The disappointment accumulated all these years and now, there was no sadness left, only numbness. Jia, are you all really moving out? Liang Jiahao asked. Liang Wanjun glanced at her daughter and said resolutely, we've troubled you for a long time. Jia, Liang Jiahao sighed. I know that you and brother-in-law helped us a lot. I'm sorry, I'm really in a tough spot. About the company, will brother-in-law still be working? Yi Wanwan stood by the side and sneered. After so much talking, all he wants to know is whether dad will be working at the company still. Liang Jiahao treated her dad as if he had the capabilities of many people and even used him like a slave. Obviously, he couldn't bear to part with such cost-effective labor. This uncle of hers had no management skills at all. With her father around to help him, he was naturally very relaxed. But this family pretended to be mistreated after being granted a favor. Before her father could reply, Yi Wanwan said, like cousin Shirhan said, how can us kids tire out our parents? With that said, they had nothing to do with Liang Jiahao's family anymore. It was fine if they took care of each other as relatives, but this family of ingrates was worse than a bunch of strangers. Behind him, Fang Xiumin got anxious when she heard that. How could you do that? The company has many projects only halfway done. It's too irresponsible of him to just leave like that. Yi Wanwan laughed. Oh, irresponsible? Then why doesn't my father become the boss and have complete responsibility? I suddenly remembered that my dad put in an investment to start this company before too, right? You're dreaming. Fang Xiumin's expression changed immediately. Unlike how Auntie dreams, Yi Wanwan said, chuckling. She then said in a reassuring tone, Auntie, don't be nervous, whether it's the house or the company, we're not interested in them at all. After all, we don't have a habit of picking up bones we throw out. This tone of voice was obviously mocking them as a family that was worse than pigs and dogs. Yi Wanwan couldn't be bothered to continue bickering with this family, so she dragged her parents out and left. Fang Xiumin was so mad that she yelled furiously at Liang Jiahao, you're just standing there letting that stupid girl bully me like that, not saying a single word to defend me? Seeing Liang Jiahao still kept his silence, Fang Xiumin gave him a shove. Say something. Yi Xiaoting's gone now, so who's going to manage all the things in the company? Liang Shirhan stared at Yi Wanwan's retreating figure with jealousy. Mommy, let them leave. They're just a bunch of stray dogs, what's there to be mad about? Can't the company survive without him, huh? Fang Xiumin took a deep breath. Shirhan's right, they're just a bunch of stray dogs. What's there to be mad about? In the future, your Auntie Mei Xian and Yi Jia will help us. Who wants this lousy house and lousy company? Liang Shirhan nodded continuously. Right now, half of the showbiz belongs to Uncle's Yi Group, and Yi Jia's the director of talent recruitment at Emperor Sky while brother-in-law's the chairman of Emperor Sky. That family can't even find a job yet they still dare to think about making a comeback. They're truly indulging in fantasies. Golden Seas, I have some business to attend to so I'll get going first. They were already at the door but Yi Mu Fan didn't enter. Mu Fan. Mu Fan. It's so late, where are you heading to? Liang Wanjun watched helplessly as her son left. Yi Xiaoting's face darkened and there was tiredness in his eyes. Forget it, don't bother with him. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Daddy, Mommy, don't worry, I'll try to persuade Ge, Yi Wanwan said reassuringly as an iciness flashed across her eyes. With her older brother acting like that, if she wanted him to come to his senses, she had to do something drastic. She'd better come up with a good plan. Wanwan, you're a good girl. Seeing their daughter being so sensible, Liang Wanjun and Yi Xiaoting were relieved. The villa had a specialized housekeeper who got someone to maintain the upkeep of the villa every month, so although it had been a long time since somebody lived in it, it was still very clean and tidy. The expensive furnishings in the house had been auctioned off, but the other items were still there. Yi Wanwan looked at this utterly familiar place and was misty-eyed. I'm finally home. Actually, they only lived in this little house before because it was located in a rare district, built on a very valuable piece of land, and her mother liked the surrounding neighborhood, so they hadn't moved after so many years. The house wasn't big, and since it was built many years ago, it was somewhat old. When she earned enough money in the future, she'd get them a better place. Yi Wanwan was afraid her parents would worry, so she didn't dare tell them about the things she did with Chu Hongguang. She only mentioned that she helped a friend when he was at his lowest and lent him some cash, so the house was gifted to her by her friend in order to repay her. She mentioned that she was also helping that friend in his studio and interning there now. The family of three hadn't seen each other in a long time, so they chatted on and on. Other than asking about her, Liang Wanjun and Yi Xiaoting also asked many questions about that ordinary and honest boyfriend. Wanwan, that person you like, is he this Yi Bai friend you're talking about? Liang Wanjun probed. Cough cough. No, not that friend, Mommy. I know you and Daddy are worried that I'll take the same disastrous road and get tricked again. But don't worry, basically, he's nothing like Gu Yuzhe disregarding his morals for profits or tricking me for money and power. My boyfriend will do nothing of that sort to me. Yi Wanwan said all this without a change in her expression. He. That's Si Yihan I'm talking about. He, himself, is the embodiment of money and power, so what amount of money and power can make him disregard his moral principles for profits? Wait till our relationship matures a little more, and I'll definitely bring him to meet the both of you. And, wait till I think of a way to make the great devil look more ordinary. At night, Yi Wanwan chatted with her parents for a very long time, but since she had to work the next day, she eventually bid farewell to her parents reluctantly and returned to the hostel. The night air was as cool as water. A crescent moon hung overhead in the empty sky. The taxi was halfway to the hostel when Yi Wanwan suddenly told the driver to stop. After paying the fare, she walked over to a food stall in the downtown area. Tonight at Grandpa's banquet, she had almost nothing to eat. She also didn't feel the hunger when she was chatting with her parents just now, but at this moment, her tummy was crazily protesting for food. Inside the food stall, although the decorations weren't high class, it was simple and the smells of the food attacked her senses from all around. Unlike luxurious restaurants, these kinds of places were usually where good, authentic food could be found. Alright, maybe it's just because I'm feeling a little stingy tonight. Yi Wanwan picked a secluded corner and sat down. Miss, what would you like? The boss was a middle-aged man and was startled when he got a closer look at the girl's appearance in the dark corner. He immediately put on a wide smile and brought the menu over. Let me see, give me 1 sweet and sour pork ribs, 1 roasted pork, 1 steamed cushion carp, 20 mutton skewers, 10 pork skewers, 10 crispy bones. Su-yi, that's right. My master would never disregard his morals for profits, he'll disregard his morals for love. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan ordered quite a bit of food in one breath. She considered all this food a reward for herself. Furthermore, it wasn't very expensive to order so much at a place like this. The boss kept sizing Yi Wanwan up. Girls these days were usually on a diet, so he didn't expect to see someone act so unconventionally. Of course, as a boss, he really liked this kind of customer. All right. Coming right up. The food stall was a little busy, so the boss didn't stay long and left immediately after taking Yi Wanwan's order. Yi Wanwan took out her phone and initially wanted to send a text to Si Yihan, but all of a sudden, a somewhat familiar voice came from behind her. Boss, get me 5 bowls of dumplings. Yi Wanwan looked to the side and saw a young man dressed in a tattered and old denim jacket walking briskly into the food stall. Nameless. Nye. Yi Wanwan was surprised. At that moment, Yuanwan instantly turned her head, afraid that nameless Nya would recognize her. She even felt slightly guilty. After all, she actually bought a precious treasure from him for just $100. What if this guy saw her and regretted selling it to her? Very soon, nameless Nya found a round table and sat down, rushing the boss incessantly. Hurry up, boss. Minced meat for my dumplings, and remember to wrap big ones. Oh right, how much does a bowl of dumplings cost? After some time, nameless Nya seemed to remember he had to pay for them. $10, the boss, who was cooking, responded. Oh. The young man thought deeply for a moment and the corners of his mouth moved slightly as if he was making an important decision. I'll have 6 bowls. After some time, the boss presented 6 bowls of dumplings on his table. In just a few minutes, nameless Nya managed to finish off all the dumplings. Boss I've ordered so many dumplings, do you want to give me some roast pork ribs, roast fish or something for free? Nameless Nya asked eagerly. Are you kidding me? The boss laughed. 6 bowls of dumplings costs $60, one of my roast meat already costs much more. Oh. Nameless Nya thought. That won't do then. You should give me another 2 bowls of dumplings. The boss gave nameless Nya a sidelong glance, he probably couldn't be bothered to entertain him anymore. After nameless Nya spoke, another person entered the stall. This guy had a stocky build, his body was covered in dust, he was wearing a green construction safety cap, and both his eyes were sky blue. You'd know with just one look that he was a foreigner. Captain, why didn't you tell me that you're eating shit? The foreigner wearing the construction cap said seriously as he sat down in front of nameless Nya. Hearing that, nameless Nya's face changed slightly. Boss, I'd like to eat shit, give me some shit. The foreigner friend turned to the boss, speaking in his very out-of-practice Mandarin. Not far off, Yuanwan just started devouring her food and after she heard the conversation, she spat out the rice in her mouth instantly. Are you insane? Coming to my stall to eat shit? Why don't you go to the toilet if you want to eat shit? The boss stared at the foreigner, completely speechless. No, boss. My friend's Mandarin isn't great, he said that he wants shit, actually, he meant rice. Nameless Nya pulled the boss to one side, explaining softly. Boss, get me some shit, not too expensive but it has to taste great. The foreigner stroked his chin innocently. Sure, I'll get you some shit. The boss didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he turned and left. Yuanwan's sharp ears overheard the conversation between nameless Nya and the boss and she was speechless too. She reckoned that the foreigner had been fooled by nameless Nya who probably told him that the word shit meant rice. Such an annoying person actually exists. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. After the boss left, nameless Nya turned to the foreigner, looking pensive. How many bricks did you move today? The foreigner's firm muscles trembled slightly as he replied proudly, not much, just 5,000 pieces. Hearing that, nameless Nya immediately got excited, which means you earned quite a bit today, huh? I didn't do too bad today, Captain, the foreigner giggled and patted his own pocket. Immediately, nameless Nya gained some confidence and he said, Boss, get me another 10 bowls of dumplings, 1 plate of red braised pork, 1 plate of braised fish and braised pork ribs. Yuanwan, I thought I was a rice bucket myself, but this guy here is a dumpling bucket? While waiting, another 2 people walked into the stall. Captain, we're back. Although the first guy in front was dressed in menswear, his face was even more bewitching than a lady's. If one didn't look closely, he really looked like an extremely charming woman. The other man had long black hair and was carrying a stretcher on his back. His entire body looked as if it was a beautiful 10,000-year-old glacier without a tinge of human emotion reflected in his eyes. Before nameless Nya could open his mouth, the beautiful iceberg man already placed his stretcher on the ground, acting like there was nobody else present, and soon after that, he laid on it lazily. Get up. Seeing this, Nameless Nya pinched the space between his brows like he was having a headache. However, the beautiful iceberg man didn't move at all and seemed quite comfortable laying there. How lazy are you? Why don't you just die from laziness? Nameless Nya said with resentment towards the man for refusing to listen. Stand up right now. Nameless Nya shouted coldly. Seeing that Nameless Nya was angry, the beautiful iceberg man slowly sat up grudgingly, moving from a sleeping position to a sitting position. Your father wants you to stand up, not sit there paralyzed. Nameless Nya yelled, almost at his breaking point. Hearing that, the beautiful iceberg man kept silent for a long time but nevertheless listened to Nameless Nya. He held his stretcher and stood up. Aya, Captain's so cool. You're so handsome even when you're mad. I haven't seen Captain for several days already and I really miss you. Oh, did you miss me? The bewitching man next to the beautiful iceberg man nestled into Nameless Nya's embrace. Get lost, Nameless Nya said, irritated. Captain, you're so naughty. The boy sat upright obediently. He turned to the long-haired iceberg man and blinked. Hubby, you won't be jealous, right? However, the beautiful iceberg man only gave a sidelong glance at him and didn't bother responding. Seeing that the beautiful iceberg man was silent, the bewitching man looked hurt. Hubby, say something. Your expression's been so cold the whole day, it really hurts my heart. Hubby, say something, I really want to hear that voice of yours, that voice which makes people's hormones spike off the charts. Watching this scene, Yuan Wan, who was sitting at a nearby corner, was so stunned that the braised meat from her mouth dropped out. What the hell, what a complicated relationship. This bewitching man was flirting with Nameless Nya, yet he called another man his hubby. Hubby, just say one word. All right. The bewitching man persisted. Then, the beautiful iceberg man finally opened his mouth as the boy wished. Scram. The eyes of the bewitching man were filled with resentment as he immediately glared at the beautiful iceberg man. Divorce. I can't go on like this. Immeasurable deity. Suddenly, a young Taoist devotee appeared at the stall. This Taoist devotee was dressed in a white Taoist robe. He held a long streamer and there was calmness in his eyes, giving off an immortal disposition that was free from vulgarity. Yuan Wan was completely dumbfounded, this was too much for her eyes to take in. What was with the sudden appearance of a Taoist devotee? What kinds of people are these, huh? The Taoist devotee placed his long streamer down and looked at the bewitching man. Stupid gay guy, this poor Taoist has read your fortune, you will encounter a blood-filled disaster in the next few days. The bewitching man sneered. You really think you're a devotee, huh, stupid medium? When the devotee heard that, his charming face changed and a dark, evil smile surfaced. You're courting death. Oh, try me. The man shot a flirtatious glance over, the luster in his eyes was as sharp as the tip of a knife, morphing him into a completely different person from before. Hua hua, he destroyed an entire nation already. I think you'd better not try him, the foreigner reminded him with good intentions. Ha! Just him. The bewitching man who went by the name Hua Hua hugged his belly and roared out in laughter. He was about to say something when Nameless Nya rapped on the table with his fingers. Shut up, everyone, Nameless Nya said, annoyed. The moment Nameless Nya said that, the foreigner, bewitching man and the young Taoist devotee turned quiet instantly, even the beautiful iceberg man looked at Nameless Nya seriously. Nameless Nya's eyes swept across all four of them before he cleared his throat and said coldly, our team is called God of Death in Dusk. The four of them yelled at the same time. Our slogan is... Nameless Nya continued. Nothing's nicer than dumplings, nothing's more fun than sister-in-law. Captain eats dumplings, we play with sister-in-law. Captain, I don't want to play with sister-in-law. I want to play with you. The bewitching man suddenly moved closer to Nameless Nya. However, before the gay guy could approach him, he was frightened off by Nameless Nya's icy glare. Continue with the slogan. Nameless Nya dictated. Immediately, the four of them looked at each other and played a beat with their palms as they chanted, "Captain of the God of Death, talented and suave, cool 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 cool, strong 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 strong. Everyone's very honest, I feel relieved as your captain." Nameless Nya nodded, satisfied. Outside the stall, the boss seemed dumbfounded as he sized up the 5 people inside. And in the corner, the roast meat that Yuan picked up with her chopsticks fell onto the table once again with a plop. Multi-level marketing organizations these days were becoming more and more exotic. How could they even manage to shout such a shameful slogan? They're all such tools. Not long after, the boss brought their dishes out and left. After that, the little devotee carried over a carton of beers. The few people looked at the feast in front of their eyes and raised their chopsticks eagerly. Presumptuous. Put down the chopsticks. The rule in our team is that whoever's the most handsome shall eat first, the bewitching man suddenly bellowed. Hearing that, the little devotee and brick-moving foreigner sighed before withdrawing their chopsticks they'd extended. Nameless Nya crossed his legs and picked up a piece of braised pork unhurriedly, then put the entire piece into his mouth and spoke incoherently, "Dumplings are still the best." Seeing that their captain started eating, the others swiftly picked up their chopsticks. Half an hour later, there was only half a carton of beer left. Nameless Nya gave a languid look and his gaze swept across his men. "Any updates?" "Still don't have any definite news," the bewitching man said. "Captain, we're still investigating and will need more time," the devotee said. The beautiful iceberg man shook his head, indicating that he didn't have any updates. "What about you?" Nameless Nya turned to the foreigner friend who moved bricks. The foreigner replied honestly after swallowing the roast meat, "Captain, I've been moving bricks to make money the whole day. I didn't have time to investigate at all." A tinge of impatience appeared in Nameless Nya's brows. "I'll give you guys another 3 months, you must find the person I'm looking for." "Captain, don't worry, we'll definitely complete our mission," the other 4 people chorused. Yuan, who was still in the corner, clicked her tongue and thought in her heart, who exactly is this group of people looking for? Could it be someone who owes them money? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. After he had eaten and drunk to his heart's content, Nameless Nya stood up. "Boss, Bill." The boss immediately walked to them and said, "For 75. Hearing that, Nameless Nya nodded and looked at the 4 people. The 4 people also turned to look at Nameless Nya. "Where's the money? Pay up." Nameless Nya demanded. "Oh." The bewitching man pulled out a stack of notes from his pocket, mostly 50 cents and $1. After Nameless Nya counted carefully, it only totaled up to $20-something. The devotee pulled out 2 brand new $10 notes unwillingly. "What about you?" Nameless Nya looked at the beautiful iceberg man. "Captain, have you forgotten? My hubby and I are partners. My hubby pretends to be a dead man while I weep. This money is our shared income." "Oh," the bewitching man cast a flirtatious look at him. Yuan, who had been observing this interaction, selling his body to bury his husband? This money-making scheme is amazing. Fuck. Nameless Nya slammed the table and pointed at the 3 of them. "The 3 of you are useless garbage. You guys barely even made $50 today altogether. Business isn't good these days. Only one person came to see his fortune today, and he even called me a fake and didn't pay up. I just happened to pick up $20 on the ground while walking." The handsome and nefarious-looking devotee sighed. "Don't give me excuses." Nameless Nya waved his hand and interrupted him, then pointed to the brick-moving foreigner and said, "Look at little sweetie Aizenjoro, he moved 5,000 bricks in one day and made so much money. Look at the rest of you, acting like a corpse, acting like a psychic, you can't even earn $50. How embarrassing and shameless." "Pfft, little sweetie Aizenjoro, every time I hear this name, I get goosebumps." The handsome and nefarious-looking devotee discreetly turned to the brick-moving foreigner. "Captain, why are they all laughing at the name you gave me?" What exactly does little sweetie Aizenjoro mean? The brick-moving foreigner was unhappy. Cough cough. Nameless Nya turned to the brick-moving foreigner and spoke with much sincerity. Little sweetie Aizenjoro means very bold, powerful, and aggressive. They're laughing at you because they're not worthy enough to have this name. Hearing his explanation, the brick-moving foreigner nodded and said seriously, Captain, I like this domineering name. Wait till I earn more money, I'll treat you to eat shit. Nameless Nya, that's alright. Little sweetie Aizenjoro. Yi Wanwan's face was completely blank. What kind of weird name is that? Are you guys done or not? The boss standing by the side was getting impatient. These lunatics don't have the money to pay up. Please take note of your tone and attitude while speaking to our captain. A cold glow flickered in the devotee's eyes. Oh, coming here to dine and dash, yet you're still acting all high and mighty? A cleaver appeared in the boss' hand out of nowhere. Boss, don't be rash, Nameless Nya waved and turned to the foreigner. Little sweetie, take the money out. Hearing this, the foreigner nodded and took out a note from his pocket. And? Take them all out. Nameless Nya laughed when he saw the $10 note in the foreigner's hand. Captain, that's all, it's all here, the foreigner replied with extremely out-of-practice Mandarin. That's all? Nameless Nya was stunned. Didn't you say you moved 5,000 bricks? Yes, it's all here. The boss said that moving 5,000 bricks would only earn me this much, the brick-moving foreigner said. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. You moved bricks for an entire day and the boss only gave you $10? Nameless Nya tried to prevent blood from spewing out. Move more bricks next time, move 100,000 of them. Alright, Captain. The foreigner nodded continuously. Captain, have you earned any money today? The devotee asked curiously. TSK, earned any money? The corners of Nameless Nya's mouth moved upwards. He put his hand into his shirt and fished out a $100 bill proudly. Seeing the great $100 bill in Nameless Nya's hand, the four of them immediately lined up in a row and chanted, Captain of the God of Death, talented and suave, cool 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 cool, strong 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 strong. Captain's amazing, I want to give the captain a lovely kiss. The bewitching man grabbed hold of Nameless Nya. He was brushed away with one tight slap. Yi Wanwan looked at the $100 in Nameless Nya's hand. That can't be the $100 I used to buy the gift, can it? You're so mean, Captain, Captain's so naughty, oh, you're so handsome even when you're mad. I love you to death, Captain. The bewitching man looked at him with even more adoration. Little sweetie, kick him out, Nameless Nya ordered. Alright, Captain. The foreigner wiped his hands and threw the bewitching man out of the stall like he was carrying a little chicken. But in half a minute, the bewitching man charged back in again and pointed at the brick-moving foreigner. Smelly brick mover, if you put your dirty claws on my smooth skin again, I'll break your damn off. Hubby, he bullied me, doesn't your heart ache at all? Am I still your beloved little sweetheart? The bewitching man grabbed a hold of the beautiful iceberg man's arm. At this moment, seeing this group of acting prodigies, the boss finally reached his limit. Pay up right now. All of you are insane, huh? Boss, give us a break. How about a discount? Nameless Nya asked. Staring at the loose change in Nameless Nya's hand, there was only a total of $160. The boss sneered, how about I break your bones? Boss, how about this? Nameless Nya brought out a bone sculpture out of nowhere and cleared his throat, speaking very seriously. This is the alligator I hunted down in an extremely northern icy region. I used a lost skill to craft his skull. Usually, I sell it for 100,000, but I shall let you have it for cheap today. How about using this to pay for the meal? Boss, you've made a gain, the bewitching man hurriedly chimed in. Boss, quickly take it. If you feel bad, just give our captain a few bowls of dumplings. The foreigner nodded. Right now, the boss' head was filled with black lines. Never mind about dining and dashing. now they're treating me like a fool. Fuck your grandmother. The boss raised his cleaver and looked as if he wanted to chop them up. In the corner, after Yuan watched half a day of drama, she couldn't sit there quietly any longer. She coughed lightly and walked over. Then she took out $300 and placed it next to Nameless Nye. I'm lending this to you. Get lost quickly, don't hurt my eyes anymore. Miss Famous Yi, what a coincidence. Nameless Nye was slightly taken aback. He tightly grabbed the $300 that Yuan placed on the table. At that moment, the man dressed as a devotee stared at Yuan and his eyes glistened. Captain, where did you meet this little beauty? She's a customer at the booth, her name's Famous Yi. We have an affinity, let alone this name of hers. Nameless Nye rubbed his chin. Yuan was speechless. I simply made up that name and he took it for real. Captain, you're a legend in this world, yet today, you had to rely on a girl to save you. The nefarious-looking devotee lamented bitterly. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Stop talking nonsense. Nameless Nye was slightly annoyed. Whoever earns the least this month will have to get lost to Africa to carry out a task for me. No. I just want to eat my life away and wait for death. The devotee shook his head vehemently, terrified. There were only a few days left until the end of the month and he'd earn the least for sure. TSK, the most powerful Taoist devotee in the East with a kidney defect who could make one turn pale just by the mention of his name, now actually wants to eat his life away and wait for death. It's godly Taoist devotee. The devotee's face was rigid as he corrected Nameless Nye. Seems like kidney defect suits you better, the bewitching man ridiculed. Stupid pervert, I once destroyed an entire nation single-handedly, are you sure you want to talk to me in this way? A cold light flashed in the nefarious-looking devotee's eyes. Oh, that's right, you scared me, it was just a little aboriginal country and there were only a few of them, what fierce abilities you have. The bewitching man burst out in laughter. The breaths of the nefarious-looking devotee quickened as he sneered, no matter how many of them were there, it was still an independent country. Yuan swallowed her spit and stared at those people, speechless. She even started getting goosebumps. I've met people who love to brag but not to this extent. What legend in this world, what most powerful Taoist devotee in the East, what destroyed an entire nation single-handedly. Why don't you guys ascend to heaven already, huh? Even an MLM organization wouldn't dare to brag like that, right? A mental institute would suit them better. After drinking a few bottles of beer, you guys brag till you don't even know your names anymore, huh? You can't even pay a few $100s, yet you're still bragging like this? The boss of the food stall seemed like he couldn't tolerate this anymore as he waved his cleaver and sneered. Boss, don't be rash. Nameless Nye handed the money over to the boss. After seeing the money, the boss' countenance turned considerably warmer. Hold on. I gave you $10 more. Nameless Nye hurriedly ran forward and snatched a $10 bill back from the boss' hand. Damn your mother, after so many years of operating this stall, I've met all kinds of people, but for people like you guys, I have to hand it to you. The boss gave a thumbs up to Nameless Nye and the others. After paying up, Nameless Nye turned to Yuan gratefully. Thank you so much for your help just now, Miss Famous Yi. Yuan rubbed her nose. Oh, it's nothing. Just consider it my way of saying thanks for that present. After all, I did make a gain from it. That though it's a little presumptuous of me, I'm really curious, are you guys, from an MLM organization? Yuan couldn't help asking. That bewitching man became furious when he heard her. What audacity! Who are you calling an MLM organization? We are. At that moment, the devotee squeezed him on the butt and walked to Yuan. Far from it, we're a regular team. Miss, are you interested in joining us? We're lacking a female on our team. Especially a wonderful and talented one like you. Yi Wanwan, ha, no, thank you, I don't know anything. I'm just a weak chicken who doesn't even have the strength to fight another chicken. I'm undeserving of being on this completely normal team. The devotee kept trying to persuade her, Beauty, you don't have to do anything, you can be the group's pet. We'll treat you so well. In order to express my sincerity, I can read your fortune for free. I see that there are red clouds around your face, rays of light emitting from your eyes. It's a lucky sign, you might have luck in your love life in the future. Yi Wanwan, my ass. He's definitely a king among all swindlers. What lucky sign? Having luck in my love life is a great calamity to me, alright? Yi Wanwan didn't even turn around and walked away instantly. Dazzling media, Luo Chen attracted everyone's attention the minute he stepped into the company. Those newcomers and interns who wouldn't even give one look to Luo Chen before were now all going up to him to greet him. Good morning, Luo Chen Ji. Morning, Senior Luo Chen. Congratulations, Senior. I saw the video posted on your Weibo, it's too cool. I think the role of Luo Chen this time will definitely be yours, Senior Luo Chen. Although it had already been a few days, Luo Chen was still not used to his current status and was a little uncomfortable with everyone's compliments. He pursed his lips and briskly walked straight towards the office upstairs without paying his fans any attention. In the corner at the other side, Lin Hao stared in the direction of Luo Chen and his eyes filled with gloominess. A few small-time artistes who were standing by Lin Hao's side clicked their tongues and gathered together, chatting softly. Truly, things of the world are hard to predict. Who would have guessed that the 3-year has-been Luo Chen would explode in popularity so fast? I really couldn't tell that the new manager had such skills, Not only did he have a unique taste in choosing his artiste, he's also very accurate in predicting the market. I wonder if he still wants any more newcomers. There was even a newcomer who wanted to work under Yi Bai. Lin Hao folded his arms and sneered. TSK, the cause of this incident was Lin Zong's passing. Song Jin Lin only wanted to fulfill Lin Zong's final wish of filming the sequel. What has that got to do with predicting the market? He's just a lucky bastard. One of the newcomers mumbled meekly, but the main selling point was that video. It's really very creative and immediately put Luo Chen out there. The newcomer was afraid of infuriating Lin Hao, so he didn't dare speak too loudly. In showbiz, having luck was also a strength. Lin Hao carried a look of disdain. You guys are so naive. Do you know how many people are fighting for this role? You think just him, a nobody, could really get the part simply because of a popular Weibo post? Considering what Lin Hao said, a few of them agreed that the competition for the casting of Terrifying Dragon 2 was intense. Even though Luo Chen had the most votes now, his competitors had great influence as well. There were even some who were willing to bring in their own investments, so it was really hard to say who would get the part. Yi Wanwan's office, dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Please come in. Yi Wanwan just sent a text to Si Yihan to ask him out for a candlelit dinner tonight when she heard knocking on her door. Yi Ji. Sit. Yi Wanwan indicated for Luo Chen to take a seat, then raised her head and asked, How's training coming along? It's alright, Luo Chen responded. At the same time, a tinge of confusion flashed in his eyes. Initially, he was questioning why his manager wanted him to learn martial arts, which he found completely useless. In order to attend training, he risked everything and quit his odd jobs, living every day in worry and self-doubt. But he finally understood there was a reason behind Yi Bai's actions. There were quite a number of acrobatic fight scenes in Terrifying Dragon, and even more in Terrifying Dragon 2. If he was skilled in martial arts, it'd be a great advantage for him. With Luo Chen's humble character, when he said his training was alright, it probably meant he had a mark of 90 or higher. Yi Wanwan nodded in satisfaction, then casually said, Take your shirt off, let me see. The moment the words of the young man fell, Luo Chen's face instantly turned ghastly pale. He raised his head suddenly like he heard something horrific. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan probably realized that what she just said seemed to create a misunderstanding and the corners of her mouth twitched. I'm just asking you to take your shirt off, you don't have to look like you lost your head, alright? Jia, watching you stripping is more risky, even my little heart is trembling in fear. She knew that because of what happened before, Luo Qin had his guard up and probably didn't fully trust her yet, but if he continued to be like this, it'd be very hard for her to continue working with him. Between an artiste and a manager, the most important thing was trust. Luo Qin seemed to recall something as he bit his lip hard and his face turned paler. His gaze froze at the man seated in front of the desk. He noticed that although Yi Bai asked him to take off his shirt, his expression was pure and honest, there weren't any dirty intentions in his eyes and his look was completely different from the longing and lustful way Zhou Wenbin looked at him. Yi Wanwan knew trust couldn't be established overnight. Furthermore, what happened to Luo Chen before caused a severe psychological blow. Seeing Luo Chen's pale face, she decided not to force him. Forget it, you don't. Alas, just as she was ready to tell him not to bother, Luo Chen suddenly stood up. His fingers grabbed the corners of his shirt, then he turned over the hem and removed the old white t-shirt. Yi Wanwan was slightly startled, she hadn't expected that with the degree of repulsiveness and disgust Luo Chen had for men, he could actually manage to do this. After a moment of shock, Yi Wanwan sized Luo Chen's body up. You couldn't tell usually when he wore a shirt, but now that he took it off, Yi Wanwan saw that Luo Chen was so skinny that even his ribcage could be seen. His skin was also deathly pale, like it hadn't been exposed to the sun in ages. And this was the result of him undergoing training with a martial arts trainer for half a month. It was much worse than she imagined. Yi Wanwan pinched her brows as her head started to hurt. Although it was said that one looked 5 kilograms fatter on screen, it wasn't good to be too skinny either, and Luo Chen was definitely overly skinny. If he ever needs to take some revealing shots, his figure will be really hard to look at. She already read the script, and unlike the Luo Chen in Terrifying Dragon 1, who was innocent and naive, who could even be a little delicate and beautiful, the Luo Chen in Terrifying Dragon 2 underwent a great change in both his age and temperament. He couldn't continue to act like a youngster. Furthermore, there were quite a few scenes where he needed to show his body. He can't just go and find a body double, right? With director Song Jin Lin's harsh standards, he would never allow it. Yi Wanwan jotted down something in her notebook, then said coldly, "This won't do, you're too thin. Gain more weight first, then work on building muscle. I'll make you a plan, so follow it accordingly. Also, I arranged your training schedule along with the nutritionist. I also applied for a dormitory for you for convenience's sake, we'll be living in the same building. Here's the key, you may move in tonight. I already sent the video I shot of you to the crew for Terrifying Dragon 2, and just received an email from the crew that you already passed the first interview. Go back and prepare, you'll audition next month. I live just above you, so you can come see me anytime if there's anything you need." Luo Chen listened blankly to Yi Bai talking all about his future arrangements in one breath and accepted the key with the words, Grandview Park, engraved on it. He was in shock for a long time before he regained his senses. He clenched his fists and nodded in silence. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Managers had flexible working hours and didn't have to be in the office the entire day. After Yi Wanwan arranged Luo Chen's training schedule, set him up with a fitness trainer and nutritionist and put up a crew recruitment ad, she took a taxi to C Corporation. The little secretary escorted her directly to the chairman's office. Probably sensing that this person who had a mysterious relationship with the chairman seemed to have something on his mind today, the little secretary tried probing, "Mr. Yi, you seem troubled today." Yi Wanwan pinched her brows and didn't deny it. "Yes. Very troubled." The little secretary blinked. "What's wrong? Did something happen? Could it be that the chairman threw a tantrum again?" The little secretary only heard a resentful sigh from the stunning young man next to her. "Your boss looks too charming." Little secretary, huh? Why does this, oddly sound like someone who's troubled because his girlfriend's too beautiful? In the chairman's office. When Yi Wanwan entered, Si Han still had some business to deal with and was in the middle of a video call with someone on the computer. Yi Wanwan walked to the sofa and sat down. While waiting, she propped her chin on her hand and stared at the man sitting at the desk, speaking fluent German into his Bluetooth headset. Behind the man was a large window. The burning rays of sun in the horizon formed a distinct contrast with the man's frozen expression, creating an extremely beautiful picture. Not to mention the man's dark brows, black, deep and serene eyes, thin lips and immaculate features. He merely sat there, yet his face was icy without a trace of a human's warmth. Just one look gave her the sense that nothing compared to this lovely sight even if she'd experienced a lot in life. Yi Wanwan retracted her gaze with much difficulty, nearly collapsing and burying her cheek in the palm of her hands. It's a sin. Breathtaking. He's way too breathtaking. How can I bring him home if he's this charming? If my parents see that he's so charming, won't they be worried sick? Truly, the evil we bring on ourselves is the hardest to bear. In the end, Yi Wanwan didn't choose a candlelit dinner at a high-end restaurant. Instead, she settled for a table at a bar. It was a place that was incompatible with Si Han's personality, but in such a noisy environment, Si Han's presence was like a quiet fictitious land of peace and happiness, refreshing the mind. Yi Wanwan cupped her chin in her hand and stared at the beauty sitting opposite, sighing and fretting. She noticed Si Han placing the wine glass in his hand down slowly. He lifted his head as his body leaned against the sofa and his breathtaking gaze landed on her face. His thin lips moved lightly and said, "Are you done looking?" Cough 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 cough. Yi Wanwan was stunned for a moment before she broke out in a coughing frenzy. Then she realized that her gaze wasn't the least bit shameless, so she said awkwardly, "You're too good looking, that's why I was staring." Yi Wanwan finally stabilized her mental state and was prepared to talk business. "Baby, did you hear what I said last night at my grandpa's birthday banquet? The one where I told Gu Yuze about calling off the engagement." Si Han, N. Judging by Si Han's expression, he was probably in quite a good mood. Yi Wanwan's eyes lit up instantly and she tried asking, "Can I make a little request for my good behavior?" Si Han took a sip of his wine and gave a sidelong glance at her. "What is it? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon." Yi Wanwan mulled over the issue for a long time before finally opening up. "It's like this. Because of that scumbag Gu Yuze before, my relationship with my parents became estranged. This time, after returning to the Yi house, I already made things clear with my parents to make sure that they have peace of mind and believe that I've really thought things through carefully. I told them about us." With that said, Yi Wanwan paused and observed Si Han's expression while she continued, "Plus, we've been living together for more than 2 years already, so would you like to come back with me to meet my parents?" Her worst fear was that someday, her parents would accidentally find out about her and Si Han. Considering Si Han's attitude toward her parents, or if her parents found out that she was forced into this relationship, she didn't dare to imagine the consequences. So she had to find a solution that satisfied both parties before things got worse. If Si Han was agreeable and willing to cooperate, that would be best. The moment Yi Wanwan said that, she inexplicably felt the surrounding noise completely filter out from her ears. All her attention was on his reaction. His fingers that were on the glass paused. The lighting in the bar was too dim, she couldn't really see Si Han's expression clearly. Time went by, second by second. "You're not okay with it?" Seeing no reaction from him, Yi Wanwan lowered her gaze, looking desolate. "Si Han, am I just a toy to you? You lock me up when you're unhappy, you let me out to fly a few rounds when you're happy. I know you don't really like me having close relationships with others, even my parents, but, with this attitude of yours, my parents might think that I've been abducted by bad guys, or even worse, they might think that I've been imprisoned and kept as a mistress." Si Han's face darkened as he looked at her, airing more and more grievances like she was about to cry. They're my parents and also your future in-laws. Were you just fooling around with me and not planning to get married this whole time? After Si Han heard the word, married, his icy expression changed slightly, then he finally said, okay. The moment Si Han said that, Yi Wanwan's head became like a sunflower finally seeing the sun. She looked up immediately and exclaimed, ah. Really, really? When you meet them, can you change your appearance to make yourself look uglier? Ah no, no, to look more able, virtuous and kind. Ah no, what I meant was, to look safer. Si Han's expression that just warmed up a little instantly became like whistling northern winds. His voice also froze as he spoke, enunciating each word carefully. Am I too shameful to bring home? Yi Wanwan shook her head anxiously like a rattle. How could that be? It's just that, you know, ever since Gu Yuze, my parents were very worried that I would be cheated on again. They're afraid I wouldn't be able to control someone who's too handsome and rich, afraid that he might forsake me or cheat on me, etc. Furthermore, I actually found someone who's extremely wealthy and could smash the vault of heaven. If I showed you to them like this, they'd probably be so worried that they couldn't sleep soundly. So while I have the ability to put their hearts at ease, I can't reveal your identity to them, so I have to trouble you a little. Law. Si Han seemed amused as he looked at her. He took things easy. How safe do you want? Yi Wanwan took out her phone and showed him an image. Something like this is fine. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan spoke as she sent the photo directly to Si Han. In the photo was a comedian wearing a very outdated red checkered shirt from the 80s, straight green pants and a pair of black thick-rimmed glasses. He also had very tan skin, a pair of buck teeth and was bald. His appearance was extremely hard to explain with a few words. Yi Wanwan asked excitedly, what do you think? It's very safe, huh? It's more than safe, nobody would want him even if you delivered him to a girl's doorstep. It's perfect. Furthermore, nobody will be able to recognize who he is. The expression Si Han had after looking at the photograph, Yi Wanwan's conscience was probably triggered as she felt that transforming the stunning Si Han into this person was quite a feat, so she compromised and said, "Cough, you can have some hair. If you find the red checkered top too garish, I can let you change it for a green one. I can also allow you to remove the glasses. No, your eyes are too alluring. Can't do without the glasses." Seeing that Si Han's face was turning uglier, Yi Wanwan swallowed and said earnestly, "Baby, I really don't want this either, but this face of yours looks." Si Han's face was frosty. "Like I would cheat on you." Yi Wanwan hurriedly said, "How could that be? Baby, I know how you feel about me. You didn't even mind when I looked so atrocious before. I'm just scared that my parents would be worried and say." Yi Wanwan's lips were almost torn apart from all her persuading, but negotiations still broke down. Grandview Park. After they returned to the apartment, Yi Wanwan was still unwilling to give up and gave one final attempt. Sweetheart, think of it this way, if you're very ugly yet you have a beauty by your side, people will definitely think you're a tycoon. Wouldn't that feeling be amazing? Wait, this is wrong, you're a tycoon in the first place." Yi Wanwan was in despair. After accompanying Yi Wanwan to her doorstep, Si Han didn't have any intention to enter, so he turned and left immediately. Yi Wanwan panicked and blocked Si Han's path abruptly, pushing him into her apartment. "Why are you being so unreasonable? I dressed up horrendously for you so many times but you can't even do it for me once." Si Han was pushed to the edge of the sofa. His eyes narrowed and he was about to make a move, but in the next second, he was suddenly blocked by Yi Wanwan, resulting in her acting like an evil tyrant pushing a young lady around. "What if I said no?" Si Han asked faintly, his terrifying eyes tinted with frost. Yi Wanwan spent a second being charmed by this pair of beautiful eyes but was even more determined to not allow him to meet her parents with his real face. Thus she pushed him directly onto the sofa and pressed against his body with one knee. Today, you have to yield no matter what, even if you don't want to yield, you still have to yield. The moment Yu Wanwan said that, there was a clang. Following that was a pop. Two peculiar sounds came from behind her in succession. A bad premonition suddenly appeared in Yu Wanwan's mind as her back stiffened and she turned around. Then she saw Han Xianyu, who was in his pajamas and slippers, standing at the entrance. He was flabbergasted with a fallen box of canned beers by his side. The thing that made Yu Wanwan give up all hope was that the frail teenager next to Han Xianyu was actually Luo Chen. The poor child was completely dumbfounded, his script was scattered all over the floor. Fuck. What just happened? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. What's the situation here? After Yu Wanwan saw the two people at the door, she looked like she'd been struck by lightning 5 times. Han Xianyu's dashing face was mixed like a myriad of colors on a palette, while Luo Chen's pale little face was like a little white flower that had just been blown away by harsh winds. The 3 pairs of eyes met each other as they gazed at one another in dismay. There was a dead silence in the air. You guys, listen to me, this is definitely a misunderstanding. When Han Xianyu heard that, he stared at her leg. Yu Wanwan looked down and quickly put down the knee that was atop Si Han. Anyway, things aren't what you think. Han Xianyu then stared at her hand. Yu Wanwan quickly released the hand that was grabbing onto Si Han's collar like she touched a hot potato. Luo Chen, your senior Xianyu can be my witness. Yu Wanwan hinted at Han Xianyu to quickly help her convince him, considering how frightened that kid was. Han Xianyu stared at the man who had been the victim with his shirt a mess. He rubbed his nose and said, I, myself, am quite startled too. Yu Wanwan was so mad that she glared at a certain someone on the sofa. From Si Han's angle, he had definitely seen the people at the entrance, yet he didn't give her the heads up. She had just finally managed to earn a little trust from Luo Chen, but now, everything was back to square one. Si Han sat up leisurely and straightened his lapel and tie. As the victim who had just been pounced upon by a guy, he was the calmest one in the room. Things with Han Xianyu were still fine, it was no big deal even if he thought she, as Yi Bai, liked men, but Luo Chen was different. If Luo Chen thought she was gay, he'd no longer look at her straight anymore. Thus, Yu Wanwan poured all her attention on Luo Chen as she bent down and picked up the script scattered all over the floor before passing it to him. The moment she extended her arm, little sheep Luo cowered a little. Yu Wanwan shed tears in her heart. She forced herself to explain in a calm and collected manner, Luo Chen, let me introduce my friend to you, his surname Si. Just now, I was messing around with him because I had something I needed his help with and he wouldn't help me. It didn't scare you, did it? Luo Chen remained in a daze and stood there, his expression distracted and lifeless. All right, she already knew his answer. There was no other way. All Yu Wanwan could do was casually change the topic. Were the two of you looking for me? Han Xianyu coughed lightly. I met him on the way out and realized he was looking for you, so I brought him here. At that moment, Luo Chen stammered, Yi, nothing much. I just wanted to talk to you about the script, since you have a guest here, then, another day, perhaps. Luo Chen finished speaking, so he eagerly turned around and ran away. When he ran out, he accidentally bumped headfirst into the door with a loud bang. Yu Wanwan looked at the shaking door and covered her face in silence. Oh God, why must I be training a little sheep? Everything's been ruined just like that. Now I have to redo. Han Xianyu coughed lightly and secretly peeped at the indifferent man adjusting his lapel, then turned to Yu Wanwan and said in a low voice, You went too far this time, even I was so startled that I almost misunderstood, not to mention that little kid. Yu Wanwan's face darkened. Don't mention it. I just wanted to ask if there was any way I could fix this. Han Xianyu rubbed his nose. I think it's really hard, unless... Unless what? Yi Wanwan immediately asked. Han Xianyu spoke in a joking manner and waved his hand. Unless you're a girl, Yi Wanwan, liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Unless I'm a girl. Damn it, I am a girl. I'm a girl who likes guys, alright? But the problem is that if other people find out I'm a girl, how would I deal with my broken agreement with Si Han? Compared to the little sheep Luo Chen, it was obvious that the great devil was a more thorny problem. So my identity as a woman must never be revealed. She could only think of another way to explain things to Luo Chen. Although Han Xianyu wanted to help, his hands were tied, so he left after picking up his beer. Before he left, he even helped them close the door thoughtfully. Inside the apartment, Yi Wanwan shot a look of resentment at Si Han. Are you happy now? I already paid such a heavy price. Si Han's slender and long body sat on the sofa, his deep and unpenetrable eyes gazed at her. You think I really mind being ugly? Being stared at by those eyes, Yi Wanwan subconsciously asked, then, what else is it? Si Han didn't say a word, but the way he looked at her made her feel a sense of coldness and desolation, like her surroundings were barren. This cold and distant man who seemed to have no human emotions was giving her a sense of loneliness and solitude. Yi Wanwan looked at the silhouette of the lonely man and her heart ached slightly. All right. She had to admit, the reason why she wanted him to meet her parents wasn't because their relationship was maturing, but it was to mellow out his attitude towards her parents. She was afraid that he might do something that would harm her parents. She knew that ever since being reborn, she hadn't had a sense of security and had never genuinely opened herself to others. However, with such an unequal relationship, how could she have no reservations? Even after she was just reborn, she considered just enduring things till Si Han died, then she would be freed and liberated. She remembered that Si Han's health had never been good. He already started to have all sorts of complications around this period of time, and during the year when she and Si Han got a divorce, it was as if the oil in Si Han's lamp dried up, leaving not much time for him to live. She clearly remembered that when Si Han was signing the divorce papers, he couldn't even hold the pen properly. After she left Si Han, she heard about his critical condition in newspapers and gossip. Although Si Han already had a bundle of health issues, she couldn't deny that her meddling accelerated his death. In her previous life, because of her, he treated his family as his enemy and had to deal with all kinds of trouble both domestically and externally, including assassination attempts. Due to overexertion, his already weak body deteriorated even more rapidly. Si Han's feelings towards her were so extreme that she couldn't take it, so she always thought about running away. But what was undeniable was that no matter in this life or the past, no matter how terrifying this man looked on the surface, he never hurt her or the people around her from beginning to end. Furthermore, after she was reborn, she discovered more and more sides to Si Han that she hadn't seen before. She just wanted to have freedom and wanted to preserve her life. But why was it that every time she thought about his deteriorating health, thought of his illness, thought about how in a few years' time, Si Han might be terminally ill, her heart felt as if a huge sharp claw was tearing it apart? Actually, Si Han knew very well himself, he knew very well that she'd been deliberately putting on an act. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. That's right, given how shrewd he was, how could he not see right through her thoughts? At first, she thought Si Han was just treating her like a pet he cared a lot for. She assumed he didn't really mind whether she was loyal to him and only needed her to be well-behaved and obedient. And this man didn't know how to express himself, so she never thought too much about it. However, when Si Han looked at her and said, "You think I really mind being ugly?" she felt an inexplicable feeling of sadness and disappointment towards this man. An unmeasurable amount of time went by and Yi Wanwan was still lost in thought, and his low and hoarse voice rang out, "I'll go." After Si Han said that, he stood up and walked towards the door. Then, just as he was about to push the door open and leave, something tightened around his wrist. Yi Wanwan had subconsciously followed behind him and she pulled at the edge of his shirt. "Thank you." Si Han didn't say a word and remained expressionless. The second Si Han was about to take another step to leave, Yi Wanwan suddenly said, "Why don't you stay the night?" Si Han's eyes flickered for a moment, then he lowered his gaze and looked at her. Yi Wanwan saw he didn't move, so she pulled his hand and led him back inside. "Your dark eye circles look darker again. When it's convenient for you, try to come over and stay over more. Whenever I have no work to attend to, I'll head back to Jean Garden to see you." Sensing that Si Han was staring at her, Yi Wanwan said, "What's the matter? Don't you sleep better when you're with me?" Worried that he would find her change in behavior too drastic, Yi Wanwan added, "Cough, treat it like I'm returning a favor." "Thank you." She knew that to a controlling person like him, the compromise he made just now wasn't easy. Yi Wanwan sounded very calm, but she knew how she felt deep in her heart. Although Si Han's extreme paranoia and possessiveness towards her in her previous life caused her to suffer so much that she didn't want to live, he never lied or betrayed her. It was also because of him that she finally saw the true colors of Shen Mengqi and Gu Yuzhe. She knew that she could never accept a relationship like this of such unequal status. It was like a dangerous wall that could crumble anytime. She could never accept Si Han's unreasonable possessiveness and his unpredictable moods. But she also couldn't deny that after changing the way she interacted with him in this life, she was able to see him in a different light and was moved by him. She claimed she wasn't sure how she felt towards Si Han, but she was sure that at the very least, she didn't want him to die. Forget it, since she couldn't figure it out, she would just go with the flow then. Even if she gained freedom, she didn't want it to be through his death. The night was extremely quiet. The two of them laid in bed in silence. Si Han was exceptionally still when he slept. There wasn't a single movement from him at all, so Yi Wanwan wasn't sure whether he had fallen asleep or not. Yi Wanwan felt uneasy and couldn't fall asleep, so she turned her head and asked gently, "Oh right, I almost forgot to ask you something, do you know Mei Jing Zhou?" Si Han's usual cold voice came from her side, "No, I don't." Yi Wanwan blinked, "Weren't you the one who asked him to attend Grandpa's birthday banquet?" Si Han's tone didn't change, "No." Yi Wanwan, if she hadn't secretly asked Sui about it before, she would have almost believed he wasn't responsible. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. The next morning. After Si Han left, Yi Wanwan gave Sui a call. "Hello, Miss Wanwan." Sui felt a little weird when Yi Wanwan called him so early in the morning. "How's your master's health lately?" Yi Wanwan got right to the point. Sui didn't understand Yi Wanwan's intention of asking this question and he felt hesitant to answer it. "Is it really bad?" Yi Wanwan frowned. Sui carefully considered how he phrased his words. "It's not optimistic indeed. Ninth Master hurt himself when he was young and he hasn't recovered from his old illness all this time. Plus, his serious insomnia only worsens his condition. Before, the miracle doctor's son saw Ninth Master and even said with certainty." "Said what with certainty?" "That if Ninth Master continued like this, his body would gradually be unable to handle it." Sui finally decided to answer truthfully. Yi Wanwan should have known all this after being by Si Han's side for 2 years, but she probably couldn't wait for Ninth Master to die, much less care about him. Yi Wanwan became silent instantly. As expected, his condition was identical to what it was like in her previous life. On the surface, Si Han didn't seem to have any problems, he never displayed his emotions, much less his pains. But the truth was that he had an entire body of illnesses. The year that she and Si Han got a divorce, he was so weak that he couldn't even put on an act anymore. When he went outside, he was usually confined to a wheelchair and the number of times she got to see him became rare. "What if he recuperates properly?" Yi Wanwan asked. Sui pondered for a moment. "I can't be sure. Ninth Master has a heavy workload, he needs to work for the family, the company, and maintain his power in other places. They all need him. In addition, with his sleeping disorder, it's almost impossible for him to recuperate properly. Alright, I got it. Yi Wanwan hung up. She leaned against the wicker chair on the balcony and stared out the window in a daze, spiraling into a chaotic memory from the past. There were some things she had been preventing herself from probing or thinking about, but she still couldn't run away from them. If she didn't remember wrong, in just a few days' time, Si Han would lead a group of elites from the company along with the most advanced research and development equipment to Country B to negotiate with an important partner. Halfway through the journey towards Country B, Si Han would encounter a serious robbery. Not only would he suffer a disastrous loss of staff, but even his equipment would be robbed. Si Han would also be severely injured. She remembered that Si Han nearly lost his life during that robbery. It caused him to become bedridden for many months and his already terrible body weakened further. The severe injuries sustained from that time were undoubtedly Si Han's amulet for a hastened death. Yi Wanwan wasn't sure whether this incident would happen again in this life. If it happened, no matter how he tried to recuperate, his body probably couldn't recover. Yi Wanwan shook her head and banished those nonsensical thoughts from her head. Maybe things will be different in this life. Furthermore, she hadn't heard about Si Han planning to go be country anytime soon. The next issue she had to worry about was Luo Chen. Yi Wanwan sighed again, then she took out her phone and called Luo Chen. In the end, nobody answered. After she called the second time, still nobody answered, but Luo Chen sent a text to her telling her that he was in training and couldn't take her call at the moment. Seems like he really was scared. Forget it, I'll just let him calm down first. If he was triggered by this little thing, everything she'd done up till now had all gone to waste. Yi Wanwan studied the script by herself the entire day, and before she knew it, it was already night time. Her phone rang. It was a text from Si Han telling her that something came up at the company and she didn't have to wait for him for dinner. Yi Wanwan stared at the text and frowned. Working late again? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Imperial City Northern Suburbs, a certain company under C Corporation. Si Han was discussing matters with a few people from the company's top management when Yi Wanwan arrived. Qin Ruoxi and Lu Ying were present as well. Everyone had a solemn expression. The moment he saw Yi Wanwan, Lu Ying's face darkened. Although the other higher-ups were very curious about Yi Wanwan, they guessed that she was the darling pet of their boss that they heard so much about. No matter how curious they were, everyone behaved themselves. They didn't dare to keep staring and focused intently on their discussion. As for Qin Ruoxi, when Yi Wanwan entered, she nodded politely and continued her report in a composed manner. Si Han's desk was piled with all sorts of documents, but the lunchbox sitting at the corner of his coffee table didn't appear touched at all. This guy has a whole body full of illnesses, and his stomach's also extremely weak, yet he still torments his body like that. Seeing her sudden arrival, Si Han motioned for her to find a place to sit and wait for a while. Yi Wanwan didn't move. She pursed her lips and looked at him. You haven't had your dinner? Si Han appeared like he hadn't expected her to come down just to ask this question. Need to settle an important issue. Yi Wanwan's face turned gloomy. Which issue of yours isn't important? No matter how important the issue is it more important than your life? Si Han noticed she didn't look happy, so he took out a laptop from the drawer and passed it to her. Go play with it for a while. Yi Wanwan's face turned even darker. I'm not playing. I'm not here to play. Si Han didn't shun this woman no matter how important this issue was, and he even allowed her to sit in on such a classified meeting. She even threw a tantrum in front of everyone, so Lu Ying's face turned so ugly that it was on the verge of exploding. Su Yi wiped his sweat and kept his eyes on Lu Ying in case he couldn't control his violent temper. Qin Ruoxi still maintained a gentle and natural expression as she smiled and said, Miss Yi, don't be angry, Director C really has some important matters he has to discuss with us now. He'll be with you once he's done. Yi Wanwan had a shadow of a smile as she glanced at Qin Ruoxi being considerate, trying to help Si Han out. Yi Wanwan didn't bother with her. She took the laptop and went to the sofa. Si Han's meeting went on for a long time, so Yi Wanwan could do was use the laptop and read the news. During that time, her phone vibrated. It was a WeChat message from Han Xianyu. Han Xianyu sent a few photos to her, asking her which was better looking. Yi Wanwan scrolled through and chose one of the pictures. This one, you look better on your left profile. Many stars had a nicer angle, and each time they were in front of the media, they deliberately showed that angle. For Han Xianyu, his left profile looked nicer. Han Xianyu replied with an okay. Then Yi Wanwan swiped through a web page and saw that Han Xianyu posted a Weibo. Someone said my left profile looks better. The attached picture was the one Yi Wanwan chose. Sounds of sucking up appeared in the comments section. Ah! Oh my god. My husband finally posted a selfie. I was waiting to the death for this. Handsome, handsome, handsome. Hubby looks good from every angle. Someone? Who's that someone? I smell adultery. Yi Wanwan swiped through Weibo distractedly while glancing in Si Han's direction from time to time. Seconds and minutes went by. Half an hour had passed in a blink of an eye, but Si Han and the others didn't appear like they were finishing anytime soon. When she thought about Si Han's frail body, Yi Wanwan furrowed her brows even tighter as her fingers rapped on the armrest of the sofa impatiently. Another 20 minutes passed and the needle was pointing straight at 9 p.m. Her fingers rapping on the armrest stopped as Yi Wanwan stood up, took the cold lunchbox from the coffee table and walked towards the lounge in the room. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. 3 minutes later. Yi Wanwan came out with the reheated lunchbox, then walked straight to Si Han, pulled out a chair by his side and sat down. Since Yi Wanwan arrived abruptly, everyone's eyes were on her instantly. The voice of a reporting staff member also paused as he cast an inquiring look over to Su-yi helplessly. Su-yi was stunned, unsure of what Yi Wanwan was planning to do. Something had been wrong with her ever since that call that morning. Yi Wanwan looked at all the people staring at her. You guys may continue. When she finished speaking, she took the spoon and dug up a mouthful of rice, then brought it to Si Han's mouth. Si Han was taken aback. His dark eyes stared at the girl next to him with a tinge of uncertainty. Yi Wanwan maintained her feeding position and looked expressionlessly at Si Han, who was staring at her with a complicated expression. She said, you only spoke 8 times throughout this 1 hour anyway, a total of 47 words. Simply eating wouldn't affect your discussion, right? Seeing that Si Han didn't move, Yi Wanwan moved her spoon a little closer, giving him a look that read, if you don't eat it, you'll die. Si Han stared at the girl's unhappy little face and was silent for a long time before he finally opened his mouth obediently. Yi Wanwan's face, which looked upset at the beginning, now turned slightly warmer. The others in the office looked at their boss being fed by a beauty and were left speechless. It doesn't affect our discussion. The problem was that they were going blind from this display of affection. The calm and composed Qin Ruoshi looked at Yi Wanwan, who was feeding Si Han at this moment, and her expression finally shifted slightly. She said, I was negligent and forgot that Chairman Si hadn't had his dinner yet. Luing scoffed, his eyes filled with detest. Coming all the way here to do this, who are you putting on a show for? Are you announcing your sovereignty? After Su-yi heard what Qin Ruoshi said, his eyes shifted. Why does Miss Ruoshi sound like it was because of her negligence that caused Ninth Master to miss his meal? The truth was that his master was a total workaholic. Once he started working, he wouldn't allow anyone to interrupt him, even Miss Ruoshi. Miss Ruoshi was very clear on his master's taboo, so she knew very well not to interfere too much. But right now, Yi Wanwan actually dared to interrupt his master's important discussion and even started feeding him. And master doesn't seem to be upset. Cough, everyone, please go on. After Su-yi indicated for everyone to continue, they finally returned to their senses and quickly got back into the swing of things and continued giving their reports. But now, they couldn't help but discreetly look up at the two lovebirds from time to time. Seems like it's true that ninth master really pampers that woman to the heavens. Since when did we ever see such a humane side to our otherworldly boss? Initially, they felt that Boss and Miss Chin made a good pair, but now, comparing the two of them, these lovebirds looked more like a couple in love, right? Boss and Miss Chin seemed to be just colleagues. The profit of last quarter was. Chin Roa she was giving her report, but halfway through, she saw that Yi Wanwan was feeding Si Yi Han a piece of celery and she subconsciously blurted out, Chairman Si doesn't eat celery. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan lifted her head in surprise when she heard that. Si Yi Han doesn't eat celery. In the corner, Luing sneered, she doesn't even know Master's eating habits. You don't eat celery? Yi Wanwan looked at Si Yi Han. Si Yi Han glanced at her and replied casually, N. Oh. Indeed, Chin Roa she knew him better, but this was also not surprising, even if Yi Wanwan added up the duration of both her lives that she'd known Si Yi Han, it was still shorter than the amount of time Chin Roa she had known him. Yi Wanwan retracted the chopsticks and prepared to feed him something else. In the end, before she could retract the chopsticks, it was emptied. Si Yi Han swallowed the celery on the chopsticks without a change in expression. Yi Wanwan was taken aback and she glanced at Si Yi Han strangely. Didn't he say that, he doesn't eat it? Lu Ying's smug look stiffened on his face. Su Yi covered his face silently, he knew this would happen. The point was not the dish but the person feeding it. When he saw that Yi Wanwan didn't move, Si Yi Han tilted his head and gave her an inquiring gaze, which meant, continue feeding. Yi Wanwan blinked and fed him another piece of celery hesitantly. Si Yi Han ate it again without a change in his expression. Everyone could tell that their boss was purposefully backing someone up and even unscrupulously stripping Chin Ruashi of face. It was just a minor detail, but he immediately established who he treated as family. Everyone in the room turned to Chin Ruashi instinctively, but there was no change in her expression either. After all, being able to reach her status today meant she was a force to be reckoned with. After Yi Wanwan was done feeding him, she didn't stay any longer and instantly headed back to the sofa. Another half an hour passed before Si Yi Han was finally done. Have you finished? Yi Wanwan immediately lifted her head. Su Yi replied, Ninth Master still has to go to the headquarters for another meeting. Yi Wanwan's face turned gloomy instantly. What time is it already? He still has to attend a meeting at this late hour. Su Yi coughed lightly. This meeting is more important. Important again. Yi Wanwan looked at Si Yi Han and asked, can't you reschedule it? Chin Ruashi explained, the meeting this time really is very important, it can't be delayed. I hope Miss Yi understands. Yi Wanwan didn't respond to Chin Ruashi and kept staring at Si Yi Han. Si Yi Han extended his hand and rubbed Yi Wanwan's head lightly. Go back first. Hearing that, the fury Yi Wanwan had kept inside rose in an instant. He only knows how to work. Is working more important than his life? Doesn't he know the condition of his own body? Yi Wanwan turned to Su Yi, suppressing the anger in her chest as she asked, how far is it from here to the headquarters? Seeing that the atmosphere between the two of them didn't seem too good, Su Yi answered carefully, about an hour or so. Yi Wanwan replied immediately, then I'll go as well. When Si Yi Han heard that, he turned to her, confused. Yi Wanwan glared at him, upset, what are you looking at? Can't I go? Si Yi Han, up to you. They got into the car. Yi Wanwan and Si Yi Han sat in the back seat together. Yi Wanwan was still mad, so she turned her head to the other side and sat on the opposite end of the seat, sulking. Si Yi Han, who was engrossed with his laptop, finally noticed that his girlfriend was angry. He put away the laptop and looked at Yi Wanwan. He probably found her mood today particularly short-tempered, so he asked, are you on your period today? The veins in Yi Wanwan's forehead popped out in an instant. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan was so mad that he's making my period come even when it's not time yet. Forget it, I won't stoop to his level. This guy probably wasn't even part of the human race. It was already an impressive feat that he knew how irritable girls could get when on their period. Yi Wanwan took a deep breath to calm herself down. She didn't waste any more time and stiffened her face as she pushed Si Han's head down and pressed it against her lap. There's more than an hour to go, you should sleep. This guy left at 6 in the morning and now, it's 10 p.m. and he hadn't even had a meal in between. He had been working intensely for 16 hours non-stop. No matter how strong his body was, it wouldn't be able to handle this. He really thinks he's not human. Si Han laid on her soft legs and a surprised and suspicious look flashed across his cold face. Yi Wanwan immediately glared at him. Shut your eyes and sleep. He was probably quite tired and Yi Wanwan's words seemed to hit a trigger since before an inquisitive look in Si Han's eyes could surface, his mysterious eyes were already blocked by his closed lids. Yi Wanwan was reminded of how little kids who loved hugging their beloved toy or soft toys to sleep couldn't fall asleep if their toys weren't by their side. Maybe to Si Han, she was one of those little teddy bears that kids hugged to sleep. Su-yi, who was driving in the front seat, noticed the scene at the back through his rearview mirror and looked puzzled. From that call in the morning asking about his master's health to coming down personally to force-feed him, and now she's taking advantage of the hour-long journey to get master to sleep. What exactly is this Yi Wanwan trying to do? She couldn't really be concerned about master's health, could she? The car drove steadily. The car was designed with comfort as the main priority, so Si Han slept soundly. Yi Wanwan took out a blanket from the cabinet to cover him, then she turned to Su-yi and tried to extract some more information from him. Is Si Han going on any business trips in the next few days? Su-yi replied, yes, next weekend. Where's he going? Yi Wanwan hurriedly asked. Country B to negotiate an important contract. The meeting tonight was meant to discuss this. Su-yi didn't hide anything from Yi Wanwan as he answered directly. Anyway, his master's attitude towards Yi Wanwan was already plain for all to see. He didn't have anything to hide. Once Yi Wanwan heard the words, country B, and negotiate a contract, her heart froze. It's exactly the same as before. Si Han's still going to country B. Must he go? Or can he postpone it? Must Si Han go personally? Yi Wanwan asked. Su-yi replied like he was in a difficult situation, I'm afraid he can't. Everyone in the company has prepared for this collaboration for more than 3 years. He has to go and won't be able to postpone it since it was arranged a long time ago, so master must attend it personally. Miss Wanwan, do you have something to do next weekend? Yi Wanwan's expression darkened and she didn't answer. Considering what Su-yi said, Si Han has to go on this trip no matter what, and since it's extremely important, Si Han has to be there personally. It was almost impossible for me to stop him without a good reason. Everything's fine, so why can't he go? Could I say that Si Han would encounter tragedy and almost lose his life in country B? Who would believe me? Must history repeat itself? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Once they arrived at the entrance to the office, Yi Wanwan woke Si Han up. Go on with your meeting, I'll head back first. Get Su-yi to take you. Probably because he was energized after getting some sleep, Si Han's tone was much gentler than usual. But Yi Wanwan's mood wasn't any better since she stared at a certain workaholic with pent-up frustration in her mind. She turned and left without saying a word. Truly, the emperor's not worried but the eunuch's worried to death. Grandview Park. After she returned, Yi Wanwan started to wonder how she could stop Si Han from sending himself to death. However, she couldn't come up with any good ideas even after pondering for half a day. She wasn't Chin Roashi, what she said didn't hold much weight. Never mind, things would work out in the end. She'd just make him happy these next few days, and if it didn't work, there was still the beauty trap. Yi Wanwan sighed and changed into her men's clothes, then sent a text to Luo Chen, "Come to my place in 5 minutes." She wanted to just settle this issue first. She wasn't sure what absurd thoughts this kid would think if she dragged this on. Yi Wanwan waited while staring at the time on her phone. Probably because she sounded quite harsh in the text, Luo Chen didn't dare to flake on her again, and her doorbell rang in 5 minutes sharp. "Yi Wanwan, please come in." She didn't close the door. A pair of footsteps were heard. Luo Chen slowly pushed the door open and walked in. Luo Chen looked like he just showered, his hair was still slightly damp and his clothes were put on in such a rush that one side of his shoelaces was tied untidily, making her heart soften at the sight of him. What's worth mentioning was, on this hot summer day, Luo Chen was enveloped tightly in a thick coat. Yi Wanwan ran her eyes over his outfit and the corners of her mouth twitched. What was this kid thinking when I called him over? "Sit." Yi Wanwan glanced at the sofa next to her and gestured to it. Luo Chen paused and strode towards her after a long time, but he didn't sit next to her and instead, sat at the other end of the sofa. Yi Wanwan was dressed casually in slippers. Her posture was languid, and when she saw that, she furrowed her brows, dissatisfied. "Why were you sitting so far away?" Luo Chen pursed his lips and moved a little closer to her. "It was really just a little, probably only the distance of a palm." Yi Wanwan was already in a bad mood today, and at this moment, her patience reached its limit, so she simply stood up and walked towards Luo Chen. The moment Yi Wanwan stood up, Luo Chen's entire body stiffened like a bow as he clenched his fists tightly. When she was almost right in front of him, Luo Chen couldn't sit around any longer and he bolted up like a spring. However, before he could escape, Yi Wanwan pressed down hard on his shoulders and pushed him back down. Yi Wanwan remained in this position, pressing him down. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at him condescendingly with a cold glare. "Why are you running?" Luo Chen didn't know where to look and looked like he was ready to dash out the door in the next second, but at the same time, he restrained himself for some reason. Yi Wanwan stared at him and mouthed each word carefully. "Listen carefully to what I have to say next. Firstly, I'm not gay. Secondly, no matter what my sexual orientation is, I'm not interested in having relationships with the artists under me. Thirdly, unless I'm drunk, stay away from me, and at any other time, refer to the second statement." Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan's gaze was locked on him, preventing him from escaping her gaze. Understood. Luo Chen was still digesting what she meant by her third statement, but when he heard what she said, he nodded subconsciously. Yi Wanwan was unsatisfied. "Speak up." Luo Chen hurriedly responded, "Understood." Yi Wanwan's expression then became gentler. "If I really wanted to do anything to you, I would have done it much earlier. Why would I wait till now? What I see in you is your real value. I know many managers are akin to pimps. Not only do they have unspoken rules with the artists under them, but they even make their artists drink and sleep with them. Because of this practice in the showbiz, those artists who are serious about acting and want to walk the right path become fools in the eyes of others instead. But I can guarantee that I will never force you to do those things. I'll be with you every step of the way, and you only have to focus on one thing: acting well. But this is based on the premise that you're worth making me spend so much energy on you." When he heard that, Luo Chen's face turned much warmer as he said firmly, "I will work hard." Yi Wanwan sat on the sofa and looked at him sternly. "Not only do you have to work hard, but you have to fight with your back to the river. This is your only chance for a comeback. You know very well yourself that Zhou Wenbin has been keeping an eye on us. The only reason why we succeeded this time was all because we grabbed hold at a key moment and were in the right place at the right time, so he couldn't stop us even if he wanted to. If you fail this time, all the efforts you put in would go to waste and you might never get such a good opportunity again in your lifetime. Got it? It's good that you understand." Go and have an early night and we'll talk about your script tomorrow. N. C. Family's old residence. The old madam looked at the stack of documents in the brown paper bag and her fingers trembled vigorously. This is simply. A well-dressed socialite sat next to the old madam and said worriedly, Grandma, don't be too agitated. I didn't dare to show you all this before because I was worried you'd get upset. The old madam looked at the stack of documents regarding Yi Wanwan in the paper bag and was filled with disbelief and wrath. Are all these legitimate? The socialite quickly replied, without a doubt. Grandma, if you don't believe them, you can do a check yourself. Grandma, I hope you don't mind me being nosy. I heard a few bad things about this Miss Yi from my sisters in the circle, but I didn't really believe them at first. After all, I trust in Ninth Brother's taste, but they made it sound so convincing and I was really worried about Ninth Brother, so I went to investigate by myself. I didn't know the truth till I went to check myself, and when I did, who knew I would find so many unbelievable things. This Miss Yi not only took drugs, but she's promiscuous. She was chasing other men while dating Ninth Brother. This is simply. Our Ninth Brother is such an outstanding man, how could he date such a disgraceful woman? The socialite's voice was full of indignation. The old madam shut her eyes. After a while, she finally suppressed all the emotions in her eyes and said, All right, I got it. You may go now. The socialite furrowed her brows. Grandma, what are you planning to do with this Miss Yi? I heard that Ninth Brother is completely head over heels for this woman. I'm afraid you're the only person who could convince Ninth Brother. The old madam looked sharply at her. I know what to do, Qin Yu. Watch your mouth, you must not let anyone know about this. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Grandma, Qin Yu understands. We shouldn't air our dirty laundry in public. The socialite wanted to say more, but she was worried that going too far was as bad as falling short, so she bid farewell to the old madam and left obediently. After the socialite left, the old madam recovered her calm countenance. Old Zhong, go get someone to investigate. She knew her grandson wasn't someone who was reckless, so she didn't ask about Yi Wanwan's identity and past, even when she knew her family background differed drastically from Si Yihan's. She didn't mind, as long as her grandson fancied this girl, this weary, old body would go all out to support his decision. But on the premise that this woman was true towards Jiu. She would not easily trust an outsider's words, but she had to find out the truth behind this. Since she knew about the rumors, she couldn't sit by and do nothing. Yes, the old housekeeper replied. During the gradually deepening night, the old madam couldn't sleep the entire night. The next morning, the housekeeper placed the information he gathered in front of her as fast as he could. Old madam, I already sent people to check. Once a person comes in contact with the kind of drug Miss Qin Yu stated in her report, he or she would be addicted for life. Miss Yi has been living in Jean Garden these 2 years. According to the private doctors in Jean Garden, they did a full body checkup on Miss Yi and everything was normal. There was no sign of that drug in her body, so it was most likely a rumor. The old madam's expression relaxed slightly and she indicated for him to continue. Thus, housekeeper Zhong continued, as for her promiscuity, it's completely baseless. Miss Ye's social circle is very pure, it's just that. Just that what? Just that it was true that Miss Yi had a fiancé before she met Ninth Master, but we can't exactly say that Miss Yi betrayed Ninth Master since she didn't choose to be with Ninth Master willingly. The old madam was clearly surprised by this result. After all, there wasn't a woman who didn't like her grandson. Then why did she and Jiu look so loving before? People have emotions after all, maybe they develop feelings for one another after being together for some time. Housekeeper Zhong considered his words carefully before answering. The old madam took a deep breath. The space between her brows was filled with weariness. I don't have any expectations of her and I don't care how they met. Since they're together now, I only wish for her to be true towards Jiu. Housekeeper Zhong consoled her. Ever since ninth young master fell in love, he did change for the better, and Miss Yi doesn't seem like a treacherous sort of person. Today, I even heard from assistant Su Yi that Miss Yi especially rushed down to the company to urge ninth young master to have his meal. You know that ninth young master doesn't care about anything else once he starts working, but that Miss Yi had her way with him and insisted that ninth young master eat his meal even if she had to feed him. She even accompanied ninth master for a short time on the road. The children can take care of themselves. Ninth young master is blessed by the ancestors, old madam, so you don't have to worry too much. The old madam relaxed slightly and sighed. I hope so. During the week, Yi Wanwan had been closely monitoring Si Yihan's whereabouts and movements, watching Si Yihan's diet and sleep. Time flew by and Si Yihan would be going overseas the next day. The past few days, she hadn't found a suitable time or reason to stop him. She thought about it carefully. Si Yihan could have given in to her over unimportant matters, but with such a big issue like this, he would never allow her to mess it up. Pillow talk and beauty traps couldn't possibly work, so she was probably only left with the ruse of inflicting an injury on herself to trick the enemy. Yi Wanwan was exasperated. She didn't have a choice, so she could only grit her teeth, drag out the trays of ice that she prepared in the freezer and poured them all into the bathtub. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wanwan soaked in the ice bath for almost half a day before crawling out of the bathtub, freezing and shivering. She had never gone through such torture ever since being reborn. She really risked such high stakes by playing with her health. After returning to the living room, Yi Wanwan packed everything she prepared the past few days and stuffed it all into a huge piece of luggage. Then she brought it along and returned to Jean Garden. When she flagged a taxi to head to Jean Garden, it was already late at night. Yi Wanwan passed the luggage in her hand to the servant to bring upstairs, then casually asked, "Is ninth master back yet?" "Miss Wanwan, he isn't," the servant replied. When Yi Wanwan heard that, she creased her brows tightly. For this project, Si Yihan had been working non-stop for almost 3 whole years, and lately, since this was a critical period, he worked overtime every day and couldn't get even 3 hours of sleep. And this was even with Yi Wanwan monitoring him closely, forcing him to take a nap whenever she saw an opportunity. She knew the state of his body very well. She knew very well that if he continued on this way, his health would decline dramatically, yet she didn't have any ideas on how to stop him. Yi Wanwan laid in bed and waited until dawn, but Si Yihan still hadn't returned. When she woke up, it was already the morning of the next day. There were remnants of a familiar, cold aura next to her. Seeing the bright sky outside, Yi Wanwan sobered up instantly, got up and bolted down the stairs. She saw a couple of cars parked at the entrance from afar. One of the people standing nearby was Si Yihan's main driver, while the others were his bodyguards. Si Yihan was discussing some matters to his servant at Jean Garden, and when he was done, he walked towards the gate. Su Yi jogged in front and opened the door of the back seat. Lu Ying and the others were also preparing to get into the car. Seeing that Si Yihan was about to leave, Yi Wanwan's eyes constricted immediately and she dashed over as fast as she could. Just when Si Yihan took a step into the car, a strong force charged into him from behind. In the next second, he was hugged tightly at the waist by a bundle of sweet-smelling softness. Si Yihan was startled for a second, then he turned around. After that, he saw that Yi Wanwan's hair was in a total mess and she was dressed in her pajamas with only one slipper on. She was panting and her whole face was filled with anxiety. "You're not allowed to leave." Si Yihan stared at her bare foot and frowned. "Where's your other shoe? Considering the situation right now, who cares about my shoe?" Yi Wanwan panted as she grabbed onto Si Yihan's arm tightly and repeated anxiously, "Don't go. Don't go overseas. Don't go to Country B." In a moment, Su Yi, Lu Ying, the bodyguards and everyone else's eyes were on Yi Wanwan. The servants saw what was happening and hurriedly ran to pick up Yi Wanwan's slipper. Si Han was about to help her put it on, but Yi Wanwan was so agitated that she kicked her other slipper off as well. Don't bother with the slippers. Are you listening to me? Don't go to country B. Yi Wanwan's mood had been fluctuating and unpredictable, hot-tempered and irritable lately, and Si Han had gotten used to it. He brushed this off as another tantrum of hers and said, I'll be back in a week. Yi Wanwan was furious, come back my ass. Yes, you'll be back, but you would barely be alive by then. Yi Wanwan whimpered and glued herself to him, no leaving, no leaving. I'm not feeling well. It's torture, are you just going to leave me alone here? Si Han knitted his brows. Where are you feeling unwell? Yi Wanwan replied instantly, I feel faint and my vision's blurry, my limbs are weak, and I can't even breathe properly, it must be a fever. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. When Si Han heard her, he extended his large palm and placed it on her forehead. After a moment, his face relaxed. Temperature's normal, you don't have a fever. Yi Wanwan's expression turned gloomy. What? I soaked in ice water for nothing. I actually already realized that when I woke up, I didn't have a fever and felt even more invigorated and could leap and run around. She didn't have a choice anymore and could only show off her acting skills. Yi Wanwan immediately protested, nonsense, why do I feel so uncomfortable then? Your hand isn't accurate at all. Liar. You just want to leave. You just want to leave me here alone. To be safe, Si Han took a look at her, held her wrist up and placed his fingers on it. Yi Wanwan looked at Si Han's actions and was stunned, completely dumbstruck, damn, since when did he learn how to take somebody's pulse? Yi Wanwan swiftly withdrew her hand, but Si Han had already roughly taken her pulse and knew she was fine. He said with a slight annoyance, no messing around. Great White's in the backyard, go play with it. Oh, Great White. Great White's back. And he's in the backyard? Yi Wanwan forced herself to resist this huge temptation and gritted her teeth, then she clung to Si Han's waist, unwilling to let go. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want Great White. I want you. I want you to accompany me. Si Han was a little surprised and his heart inexplicably softened. Did you have a nightmare? Yi Wanwan's little head buried in his chest as she nodded repeatedly. I had a nightmare. I had a very, very scary nightmare. I dreamed that you were in danger during your trip to Country B, so can you not go? Si Han caressed her hair. It's always the other way around in dreams. Yi Wanwan exclaimed anxiously, but it was very real. I remember every image and every detail very carefully. I remember that all of you were plotted against, I remember that you were seriously injured and almost lost your life. At this moment, Luing couldn't tolerate this anymore, so he turned to Yi Wanwan and said, Miss Yi, I'm afraid you're overthinking. It was just a dream, how could you take it seriously? Master has our protection, so that would never ever happen. Please stop worrying. Yi Wanwan glared at him. I know you guys are strong, but can you guarantee that there's no one out there stronger than all of you? How can you guarantee that there won't be any sudden attacks? Luing perceived her words as trying to twist words and force logic on him. His eyes overflowed with hatred. He turned to Si Han and reminded him respectfully, Master, we don't have much time left. Yi Wanwan panicked, so she stared at Si Han and said, if you dare to leave, I'll go to the cellar immediately and drink all the alcohol. I'll hit on all the guys and girls in Imperial City once. When you're back, you'll have a whole prairie of Siberia in your house. Si Han, Yi Wanwan tiptoed and kissed his chin, then pulled him towards the house. Don't leave, stay with me. After speaking, she got closer to his ear and whispered in a volume only Si Han could hear, don't go, alright, let's go back into the house, we'll do some happy things. Si Han's deep eyes immediately turned gloomy. He pinched his brows and stared at a certain little girl ruffling feathers and courting death. We'll delay leaving for half an hour. Finally, Si-han relented. With that said, he carried the barefoot Yi Wan and walked towards the house. Yi Wan whined, unsatisfied. Huh? Only half an hour? Isn't that a little too short? Si-han, shut up. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. After Si-han left, Luing was so furious that he punched the car door. Sick, my ass. Rosy complexion and loud voice, how is she even sick? Harassing master in front of so many people, she's completely shameless. A bodyguard by the side lamented, this is my first time seeing boss girlfriend and she's a knockout. No wonder she could make someone like our boss reluctant to leave. Luing shot a look at the person who spoke and scoffed, femme fatale. She only knows how to throw a tantrum from day to night, harassing master non-stop. She doesn't know the seriousness of the situation even at this point. Master will be driven to death by her someday. The others started to sigh too. With such an important matter, she's definitely a little inconsiderate. Could she bear responsibility for holding up negotiations? Ridiculous. Heard this woman is a daughter of a small and humble family, so obviously she wouldn't be as considerate as Miss Roashi. Don't compare that kind of woman to Miss Roashi. I don't know what boss is thinking, this kind of woman really isn't qualified to be the head of C family's household at all, right? In the bedroom upstairs. After she was given a warning, Yi Wan was still relentlessly whining softly in Si-han's embrace without any fear of death. I didn't say anything wrong, it really is too short. Actually, I think 7 days might be enough. Si-han placed the girl on the sofa, loosened the tie around his collar and stared at her, looking like he wanted to devour her. Yi Wan swallowed. She finally shut up and stopped making trouble. Si-han stared at her. Tell me, what are you trying to do? Yi Wan exploded in anger, what are you talking about? What can I do? I just can't bear for you to leave. I just don't want you to leave, alright? You're so insensitive. Fine. Leave. Just go. Go wherever you want. I won't care about you anymore. She thought of 1,000 ways and 100 plans to stop him from sending himself to his death. She froze herself till her bones ached last night and even suffered an insult of femme fatale by his men. It wasn't easy for her, alright? In the end, this bastard didn't even appreciate her kindness. Yi Wan took the blanket from the sofa and wrapped herself in it. The girl's depressing voice came from under the blanket, baddie, pervert, great devil, so mean to me, so hateful, always so cold, not gentle at all, why should I care about you, just go wherever you want. An air of silence. After some time, Yi Wan thought Si-han had left but then she felt a strong force removing the blanket. Yi Wan instantly grabbed onto one of the edges and didn't let go. Si-han used just a little strength and was able to pull away the blanket from Yi Wan. He was about to speak but was unexpectedly faced with the girl's tearful little face. Yi Wan hugged her knees and wiped her face with her hands, then asked, expressionless, what's the matter? Why haven't you left yet? Si-han pursed his thin lips as if he was facing a great crisis or difficulty and stared at her, unmoving. A long while later, the man finally said, other than this request, I can agree to anything else. Yi Wan paused when she heard that, then she turned her head slowly towards him, anything? Si-han replied, yes. Yi Wan thought about it. Then I want to go with you. Seeing that Si-han remained silent, Yi Wan acted up again and buried herself back into the blanket. In the next second, Si-han said, all right. Yi Wan's face that had been frozen before finally warmed up. She rubbed her nose and raised both her arms towards the man. Carry me there. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Si Han turned to the girl who had both her arms raised towards him, and in the end, he obediently walked over, picked her up and placed her on the bed. Yi Wanwan swiftly changed into her clothes, packed her luggage and dragged it to the wall. Meanwhile, downstairs, what did you say? That woman's coming along with us. Upon hearing what Su Yi said, Lu Ying's face was filled with disbelief. Didn't expect that this woman would come along on this trip to harass master when she couldn't stop him. She's totally outrageous. Su Yi coughed lightly. Cough, yes, for the sake of convenience. We probably need to get a few female bodyguards. Lu Ying was enraged. This is absurd. It's such an important matter, what are we bringing a hindrance of a woman for? Su Yi sighed. Don't talk so badly about her. Do you want to be scolded again? Ninth Master made up his mind, so no matter how much you dislike her, she's still the one Ninth Master's chosen. If it wasn't for the fact that she's the one Ninth Master's chosen, do you think I would have tolerated this up till now? Lu Ying's face was filled with rage while Yi Wanwan happily hooked arms with the master and walked out of the house with a fresh outfit. There were also 2 bodyguards by the side, dragging her luggage for her. Yi Wanwan had a little pink carry-on, a larger piece of luggage and an extremely large black luggage that was approximately 30 inches large that she brought over from her apartment the night before. After bringing the pieces of luggage down, everyone raised their brows at Yi Wanwan's various pieces of luggage, especially that shockingly huge one. She brought so many things. Is this big missy going on a holiday? Yi Wanwan couldn't care less about the looks from those people and warned, without a change in her expression, everything here includes my precious clothes and makeup, they have to be protected well, so don't lose them. Especially the black one. Yes, miss. The bodyguards coughed lightly. Lu Ying jogged up to them and turned to Si Yi Han anxiously. Master, the journey is long and the road conditions are bad. If we bring Missy along, I'm afraid there'll be many delays. What he really meant was that Yi Wanwan would obstruct them. Yi Wanwan hugged Si Yi Han's arm, pursed her lips and gave a sidelong glance at Lu Ying. I have my boyfriend to take care of me. Don't you think you're worrying a little too much, huh? Lu Ying was exasperated. Master's going on an important business meeting this time. If you really care about Master, you shouldn't be giving him trouble now. Before he could finish, Si Yi Han shot him an icy glare. Lu Ying. Having received his master's warning, Lu Ying clenched his fists tightly and didn't make a sound. Seeing that Si Yi Han was standing by her side, Yi Wanwan raised her head. She thought Lu Ying hadn't been triggered enough, so she kissed Si Yi Han on both cheeks. As long as Lu Ying was angry, she'd be happy. As expected, once Lu Ying saw her shameless act, he immediately became even angrier. Yi Wanwan smiled wryly, curled her lips and glanced at Lu Ying before saying faintly, I think you should just be worried about yourself. I have nothing to do, so I'll read your fortune. You'll meet a bloody calamity on your first day in country B, TSK, you'd better be careful. In her previous life, this incident involving Si Yi Han getting robbed was a huge deal. After Si Yi Han and the others returned, Yi Wanwan learned about everything that happened, including all the details, from their conversations. From her memory, she recalled that Lu Ying got into a fight with someone on the first day they arrived in country B for some reason. He even ended up breaking his head. Lu Ying perceived this as Yi Wanwan cursing him. He got so mad that his lungs nearly exploded. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. See family's old residence. Clad in the latest Chanel outfit, the socialite sat on the sofa, brewing tea for the old madam thoughtfully. She said obediently, Grandma, ninth brother won't be home for some time. Qin Yu's worried that you'll be lonely, so I came down especially to keep you company. The old madam held a string of beads in her hands as she nodded without changing her expression. You're very thoughtful, but I don't need you to stay with me. Just take care of yourself. The socialite immediately agreed with her, Grandma's right. Actually, spending time with Grandma isn't something I'm qualified to do, but... The socialite paused purposefully, took a look at the old madam, then continued, I heard that the woman with ninth brother went on a trip together with him. Since ninth brother isn't around, Roashi Jia has to deal with all the work at the company by herself. She's up to her ears in work, so I especially made this trip to see you. I hope Grandma doesn't mind. When the old madam heard that, the hand that was rotating the beads stopped. Did you say that Wan followed little ninth to country B? That's right, didn't you know already, Grandma? Gosh, I have such a big mouth. The socialite looked like she just realized she revealed too much. Why did Wan follow little ninth? The old madam asked. This. Seeing that the old madam was probing, the socialite replied, looking like she was put in a difficult position, probably because Miss Yi and ninth brother have a great relationship and she couldn't bear to leave him. I heard she made a scene for a very long time and said she wasn't feeling well. After that, she said she had a nightmare and dreamed that ninth brother would be in danger during this trip and wouldn't let him go no matter what. Ninth brother didn't have a choice, so he brought her along. When the old madam heard that, her calm face turned unnoticeably gloomy. Especially when she heard ninth brother would be in danger during this trip. The elderly usually found these sayings a taboo. Even if they were said casually, they still made her somewhat uncomfortable. How could she say something like that just to force little ninth to stay and keep her company? The old madam shut her eyes and sighed deeply in her heart. After all, she's still young and isn't very mature. Everyone knew little ninth was in a very respectable and honorable position, yet they didn't know how much hardship he had to endure in order to reach that position. Even till today, everything seemed peaceful on the surface. How much danger was hidden outside and within the C family? How many people were watching him? Those people would pounce and bite him the moment he made the slightest mistake. If he didn't want to be put to death, he couldn't ever lower his guard at any time. Her grandson had grown up in this environment ever since he was a kid. He never had a chance to indulge in the happiness of children his age. Regardless of that girl's past, her qualifications, or her family background, as long as she could make little ninth happy, the old madam would tolerate everything she did. But right now, she couldn't help but worry about her grandson's future. If little ninth insisted on letting a woman like this become the head of the household, his future would be very difficult. If she was already like this, how long could she remain by little ninth's side? If her family background and qualifications were bad, being smart and virtuous could make up for it, but the madam was afraid that, the potential daughter-in-law whom she was most satisfied with was still Ruashi. She would be at ease in her grave if little ninth had her by his side. Too bad little ninth didn't have any interest in Ruashi. Maybe she should have a good talk with little ninth when he returned. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Country B. The private jet landed smoothly on the tarmac. The group of people would head to a hotel for a little rest tonight. Country B was currently politically unstable, so Si Han and the others couldn't simply fly to their precise destination and had to drive. The entire journey would take about 3 days. They would be on the road for 3 days and the road conditions to the towns couldn't be guaranteed. Each member of the group was trained and naturally could handle small issues like this, but since they brought Yi Wan along, a delicate, pretty and troublesome woman, it was hard for everyone not to feel dissatisfaction in their hearts. This negotiation was extremely important, after all. There couldn't be any mistakes. Once they reached the hotel, Si Han went into work mode. Yi Wan leaned against the corner of his desk with her chin propped up in her palm. Work. Work. You only know how to work. Is that stupid laptop better looking than me? Si Han didn't stop typing. He gave a sidelong glance at her, then tilted his head slightly and planted a kiss on her cheek to soothe her. Yi Wan's face darkened. That was done so perfunctorily. Is he trying to make a kitten or puppy leave? Yi Wan stared at him sternly. I want a deep kiss, the kind that's 3 minutes long. Si Han finally stopped what he was doing. It was like he was trying to conceal a fire in the middle of a cold lake as he stared at the girl next to him and said, "Wait till I'm done." Yi Wan, wait my ass. Yi Wan was simply breaking down. In order to force him to rest a while, she already went all out, but this guy's reply nearly caused her to vomit blood. Why exactly is this guy working so hard? She always thought Si Yihan acted like something was chasing after him. But what could possibly threaten the great devil? She could no longer live like this. Yi Wan thought that if she stayed any longer, she would die from anger, so she stormed out of the room in a huff. Why is she angry? I wanted to do this to myself, it has nothing to do with her. As she walked to the lobby, Yi Wan saw Lu Ying and a group of others. When he saw Yi Wan roaming around in the lobby, Lu Ying's face turned completely gloomy. "Miss Yi, Country B isn't safe at night. You should remain in the house and not roam around. Otherwise, if something happens to you, we would have to divert our attention to save you." Yi Wan was still feeling depressed, so when she heard that, she scoffed instantly. "Captain Lu Ying, I'd say the same thing back to you. I told you before, you'll encounter a bloody disaster tonight. You better stay in the house and not walk around. It'll be bad if you delay the negotiations and drag everyone down." "Tisk, I'll encounter a bloody disaster. I'm afraid I might have to disappoint you," Lu Ying said mockingly. Several other subordinates standing next to Lu Ying also shook their heads and thought what Yi Wan said was hilarious. "Cough, Miss Yi, the last time our captain bled was 3 years ago." "That's right. With our captain's skills, nobody could get close to him, much less hurt him or make him bleed. What bloody disaster. This is simply ridiculous." Yi Wan yawned and looked lazily at all of them. "I'm very accurate when it comes to reading fortunes, I can't help it if you guys don't believe me." After Yi Wan left, the group of people in the lobby started laughing. "Ha ha ha, she actually said our captain would encounter a bloody disaster, this is the funniest joke I've heard this year." Exactly. I could laugh at this joke for an entire year. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Yi Wan roamed around and found that there was a beach nearby, so she walked over to take a leisurely stroll to ease her mind. There was a large rock by the sand, so Yi Wan hugged her knees and sat on top of it, watching the tumbling waves before her. Suddenly, there was a moment of bewilderment. After she was reborn, she planned to keep pacifying Si Yihan, then think of a way to redeem her freedom and lead a life that belonged to her. But right now, without realizing it, her life was more and more intertwined with that person. She was unable to discern and fully comprehend what would happen to her in the future. Yi Wan hugged her knees while sitting there and fell asleep unknowingly. Not far off, the phone of the female bodyguard who was hiding in the dark watching over Yi Wan suddenly rang, and she immediately reported her whereabouts dutifully. Very soon, a tall figure walked towards the reef, bent down and picked the girl up. Probably because she sensed a familiar aura, Yi Wan snuggled into the man's embrace naturally and mumbled, "Too much, he's too much, does he want me to be a widow?" "I won't," the low, hoarse voice replied. Liar. In her previous life, if they hadn't gotten a divorce, she would have ended up becoming a widow. The next morning, Yi Wan realized that she was in the hotel bed when she woke up. Si Yihan wasn't by her side, he probably went off for a meeting with that group of higher-ups. Yi Wan rubbed her temples, changed her clothes and went down to the restaurant for a meal. Enemies are bound to meet. She had just taken a step inside when she saw Lu Ying and his team of bodyguards eating. After the group of tall and bulky bodyguards noticed Yi Wan at the entrance, they stopped eating instantly. Each of their eyes turned to Yi Wan, the look they gave her was indescribable. When Yi Wan saw this, she raised her brows and turned her gaze to Lu Ying subconsciously. Then she saw. Lu Ying sat in front of the dining table. He was dressed in his usual black outfit and his expression was gloomy. His underlings probably knew their captain wasn't in a good mood, so all of them were completely silent. After seeing Yi Wanwan, everyone's gaze turned towards their captain instinctively. After that, Yi Wanwan followed everyone's line of sight and saw that Lu Ying had a white bandage wrapped around his forehead and there was fresh red blood seeping through it. When Yi Wanwan saw that, her depressed mood instantly improved. She strode in and even picked the seat opposite Lu Ying. Yi Wanwan propped her chin on one hand and admired the bandage on Lu Ying's forehead. Am I seeing things? Isn't this our amazingly skilled Captain Lu Ying who hasn't bled in 3 years? He was actually beaten up and badly bruised. Am I dreaming? Lu Ying's face was darker than the black coffee on the table. He instantly twisted the ladle in his hand in fury. Those bodyguards who were mocking Yi Wanwan last night had their heads buried. They kept coughing one after another and felt their faces burning. Who'd have known what this woman said would actually come true? It's unbelievable. Yi Wanwan looked at those big men acting like quails and chuckled. Now all of you know how accurate my fortune-telling is, huh? How is it? Do any of you want me to read your fortune? I'll give you a 20% discount. Oh, liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. Cough cough, she even wants to read our fortune. Hearing what Yi Wanwan said, all of their expressions were like this, never mind that Yi Wanwan was gloating at their misfortune, but she even wanted to delude them with lies. Lu Ying suppressed his boiling rage and said, Miss Yi, please watch what you say. I was just unlucky last night. A skinny young man with a crew cut standing next to Lu Ying was probably a fan of Lu Ying, so when he saw his captain being ridiculed, his face turned slightly ugly. Miss Yi, please don't joke about these things. Yi Wanwan was in a good mood and didn't argue with him. She sized him up and asked, What's your name? The youth was stunned, then replied, Song Jing. Ah. Yi Wanwan continued looking at him, her expression very subtle. Didn't expect that it would actually be him. Miss Yi, do you have something to say? Song Jing sensed that the way Yi Wanwan stared at him gave him goosebumps. Yi Wanwan lowered her gaze, laughed, extended her hand and pinched her fingers, then lifted her head and looked at Song Jing. I read your fortune just now. I predict that. Predict what? Song Jing blurted out instinctively. Although the crowd watching the commotion felt that it was beneath their dignity, they still turned to Yi Wanwan out of curiosity, wondering what nonsense she had to say. Yi Wanwan said faintly, I predict that you'll encounter a calamity in the near future. When everyone heard that, the corners of their lips twitched. A calamity again? Can she come up with something new? Song Jing's expression remained unchanged. What calamity? Yi Wanwan stroked her chin and considered her words carefully. It's a romantic calamity. Everyone was dumbfounded and cursed silently. What on earth is a romantic calamity? It's not luck in romance but rather a romantic calamity, and this calamity is extremely dangerous. Yi Wanwan acted like it was a very serious matter. Thanks to her super powerful memory, even if it was merely a few words from her previous life, she took note and remembered them clearly. She remembered that a long time after the incident happened, while a couple bodyguards were chatting, they mentioned that there was someone by the name of Song Jing whom a foreign brawny man fancied while they were in Country B and he nearly couldn't protect his chrysanthemum flower. The story was quite explosive. As of now, Lu Ying's incident actually did happen according to her predictions, so the safety of Song Jing's chrysanthemum flower was quite worrying. Yi Wanwan cupped her chin and said in a bewitching tone, I have a way to break the curse. Do you need me to give you a hint? 20% discount. Oh. Song Jing's face darkened. No need for that, thanks for your concern, Miss Yi. Yi Wanwan showed a worried expression. You really don't need it? It's very dangerous. It could cause you severe pain. Even though the brawny man didn't get what he wanted in the end, it surely caused enormous psychological trauma. You could tell from Luo Chen's behavior just how serious the impact would be on most straight men. Seeing that Song Jing didn't believe her at all, looking at Yi Wanwan like she was a fool, she could only sigh regretfully and stop pursuing the matter. She left right after eating. When they saw the retreating figure of Yi Wanwan, Song Jing scoffed in disbelief. Is there something wrong with this woman's brain? She's really a little weird and confusing. The person next to him shook his head and laughed. But Captain, she was right about that incident, someone piped up. That's just her dog shit luck. Is there something wrong with your brain too? And romantic calamity? That's extremely dangerous. Who knows what the hell she's talking about? Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. After breakfast, everyone was prepared and ready to set out on their journey. 2 days had gone by in the blink of an eye. Everything was relatively peaceful and nothing peculiar happened. There were 2 groups of people who came along this time, one in hiding while the other was led by Lu Ying at the front lines. Actually, the preparation this time was already sufficient. Furthermore, considering Si Yihan's great power, who would dare mess with the tiger's head? So Si Yihan's trip this time was just viewed as an ordinary business trip. Nobody thought anything would happen. Except for Yi Wanwan. The closer they got to their destination, the harder it was for her to breathe. Surrounded by his guards, nothing should go wrong, but who knew that a certain gang of people would appear? In the car, Yi Wanwan looked at the slightly pale-faced man next to her and said, "Darling, are you sure you don't want to have more men around? I feel very uneasy in my heart. I keep feeling that something bad's going to happen." Believe me. My gut feelings are very accurate. Yi Wanwan had been saying the same thing over and over these 2 days. Although she knew that the staff on duty today were top-notch, she still couldn't be at ease. After hearing the same thing so many times, Si Yihan wasn't annoyed at all. He glanced at her and didn't speak a word. Instead, he extended his long arms and pulled her into his embrace. He wrapped her up in his warm embrace and at the same time, his palm patted her back lightly. Yi Wanwan was stunned and her palpitating heart calmed down instantly. She lifted her head and saw that he was holding onto a document in one hand while the other still held her in his embrace as if he was protecting her from everything. Being coaxed like a child in this man's embrace, Yi Wanwan fluctuated between extremely mixed feelings. This guy, sometimes he had low EQ but he'd unexpectedly get it right sometimes. At night, the car reached a town. Everyone stopped over at a nearby hotel. Late at night, Si Yihan was having a meeting with the higher-ups while Yi Wanwan stayed in the room by herself and couldn't fall asleep. Thus, she got up and sought out Su Yi. "Miss Yi, it's so late. Why aren't you in bed?" "I can't sleep, I keep feeling very uneasy." Yi Wanwan sighed. "Su Yi, could you persuade Si Yihan to postpone the plan? If the enemies were targeting Si Yihan deliberately, they might not be able to avoid the incident even if they postponed negotiations at the last minute. But maybe there would be some changes if they postponed. It was much better than progressing on the same track as her previous life." Su Yi knew Yi Wanwan had been pestering his master, saying that something dangerous might happen, so he replied helplessly, "Miss Wanwan, even you couldn't persuade him." "My words would obviously be useless." Su Yi then tried to comfort her, "Miss Wanwan, maybe you're just too nervous. This trip is extremely safe, there won't be any problems. You should have a good rest or go visit the spa downstairs to ease up your mood. We'll reach our destination by tomorrow night at the latest." Tisk, dangerous. Was this predicted by Miss Yi again? The moment Su Yi said that, Lu Ying's voice came from behind him. Yi Wanwan wasn't in a mood to argue with him, so she glared at him coldly. "So what if I did?" Lu Ying's face turned slightly uglier. "Miss Yi, I'm showing you respect only because you're one of the master's people, but if you have intentions of doing anything that would ruin or jeopardize the master's plans, don't blame me for not giving you a warning first. You've been spouting nonsense these past few days, trying to cause a ruckus among us. It's already affected everyone negatively, so please be cautious with your words and actions. Liked it? Take a second to support novels on Patreon. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.